Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe Moore. Today, we're going to have two people on the podcast and stream, and we're going to be talking about psychedelic community building, why psychedelic communities are important, how to build them, what might the future of psychedelic-based communities look like, and I'm sure a lot more. So today on the show, we have two guests. We have Colin from the Brooklyn Psychedelic Society and Irina from Alchemy Community Therapy Center. Colin, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Joe and Irina?
Doing great. Irina, you doing well?
Doing well. Happy to be here.
Great. I'm really excited about this one. So before we kick it off, just briefly want to talk about your organizations. Irina, can you tell us a little bit about what is Alchemy?
Sure. So we're Alchemy Community Therapy Center. We're a nonprofit that specializes in training both associate therapists who are getting hours towards their licensure and training publicly around ketamine-assisted therapy and primarily how to work with marginalized populations.
Thank you. And Colin, can you tell us about BPS?
Sure. Brooklyn Psychedelic Society, or BPS, is a psychedelic society, as you maybe could have guessed, which is a community that's been around in name since 2015. We incorporated as a nonprofit in 2021, and our mission is to make community-based approaches to psychedelic healing a viable alternative to the clinical and medical approach.
Thank you very much. So, Irina, can you tell us a little bit about why is psychedelic community important? Why is it important to build something here?
Yeah, so Alchemy's been around since 2019. I'm one of the original co-founders. And one of the things that we really started to notice back in the day was just how privileged access to psychedelic therapy was. So we started to build a community of people who care about that, who care about making this accessible and equitable. And through that community building, we started to realize that really we're building what our society needs, similar to Brooklyn Psychedelic Society. It's how do you connect with others who have the same values, the same visions as you, and how do you ultimately strive to make the world a better place? It's not just about having individual psychedelic experiences, because we can all do that. We can all have big visionary trips and then really do nothing with that or go nowhere with that. But the whole point is, how do we do that and strive to make the world better?
Yeah, Colin, anything you want to add there?
Everything Irina just said, and I'm inspired by that. And I was really privileged to speak with Irina at Psychedelic Science on a stage this June. So, yeah, the idea that like the healthcare system and everything just sucks so bad, and many of us have experiences with that, and especially with this the world being as screwy as it is nowadays, it's like, do we have to make another good thing shitty? Is that what we need to make psychedelic shitty also? Is that the plan right now? And I really resonate with what Irina just shared, that like, hey, let's actually try to make this stuff accessible. And I think the community approach is not only going to make it more accessible from like an affordability standpoint, but I think it's going to make it more effective, because I think, as Irina briefly touched on, just we usually think about healing in a very individualistic sense, and as our slogan states, community is the medicine. And I think people will get more benefit about doing it among a community of peers who also kind of have follow-up support afterwards. So I think it can not only make it more affordable, I think it'll make psychedelics have more transformational impact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. I think, does everything need to be purely based on a profit motive?
Yes.
Some
got
would
it.
tell us
No,
yes.
it doesn't.
Right? And
Wrong
like,
answer.
you've been living in America for a while, Colin. So yeah, it's fascinating, right? Like I how do we, develop these systems and frameworks for connection and belonging and being seen and witnessed and healing because often we're just so abstracted from our family and our bodies that it takes a lot sometime to get back in there and in a healthy way. So I've been excited about community models. I was a board member for a long time at the larger Psychedelic Club organization, trying to spin up organizations in cities across the world. I kind of split from that a while ago, and been supporting a global psychedelic society and some more local groups instead. I'm particularly excited by the strange and novel Denver Psychedelic Club. They just produced a psychedelic cup event a week ago, maybe a week and some change ago. It was so fun. Yeah, it was a previous Sunday. It was so
Did you
fun.
go to that?
Yeah. I wrote a review about it. The amount of medals they gave away for so many different categories was astounding. I One guy I think had 4 to 6 medals maybe by the end of the night. That is bonkers.
What were the
Was it
my
for
categories?
psilocybin? Yeah.
my favorite was the most medium potency mushrooms. I loved that medal quite a bit because that's like how important is that category these days? It's actually radically important because get
Yeah.
this, 1 gram of mushrooms in the winning category was 35 milligrams psilocybin, which is like that's a dangerous weapon at that point. That's
Wow.
not that's not normal.
Wow.
Because like what Hopkins dosing like 20-25 milligrams ish, and that's that's a monster dose. And I'm sure you all have seen this kind of shift over the last handful of years. Everybody's like, oh yeah, why wouldn't you start with 7 grams? I'm like, guys, pump the brakes. Like, you don't
This
have to do that.
this heroic dose has become such a thing, and I feel like what you're speaking to is how we've made psychedelics the thing that we're all reaching for. Like that's become the ultimate goal, and we've started to miss what the purpose of using psychedelics actually is. And it's actually to connect to others on this realm, right? It's not about blasting off every single time or ever. The ego boosts that I've seen, these giant egos that are just like, well, I did more grams than you did, well, I tripped harder than you did. It's like, y'all,
I'm having
chill.
a really funny vision of like psychedelics turning into Fast and the Furious, like Paul Walker and Vin Diesel. It's like need nitrous and like, how what the hell? Like, guys, we're here healing, we're exploring, and like Terrence McKenna, even super astronaut, 5 grams, kind of what he talked about, and that's still a lot. And he really disclosed that it was a lot. And his concept was coming back with medium-sized ideas for the community, in service of the community, versus all the way weird shit that you can't even communicate. Yeah.
What's interesting too is so we're a training program, but then we're also a ketamine clinic, and we're just a therapy clinic in general. Only about a third of our clients use ketamine assisted therapy as part of their treatment. But in that, we have found that because with ketamine, you can really pick what part of the dose range you choose for each journey. We've been finding that the smaller doses can be so impactful and so deeply relational too. And in some ways harder, because to stay in relation with another person while you're in this more vulnerable, open state is emotionally a harder thing to do than just to blast off and then come back and be like, oh wait, you were here?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Colin, are you seeing any kind of evolutions in the community and in what you're seeing in Brooklyn?
That's a good question. I mean,
Helpful or otherwise?
yeah, I mean, I have a full confession. I don't really trip myself as much as I used to. And so I feel sometimes I'm out of touch a bit, like what the latest trends are with like the strains or stuff or like the potencies. I will say though, a consistent theme after organizing for 10 years is just like the juiciest stuff people are looking for is like not like just psychonautical feats, but actual healing or change or just like or just slowing down and being able to like better relate to people or their significant other or themselves. Like it's got this kind of like contemplative dimension, reflective dimension to it, I think is good. Like that's like the real fruit, I think, of like people who are doing psychedelics in a healthy way, it's like there can be healing, or if it's not about like healing specifically, it's about like, let me be more like intentional in my relationships and like how I relate to others. And so I do see this kind of Fast and the Furious-ish kind of thing happening. I think that's just partially one, America, but also two, probably New York, that like everyone wants to do maybe the stronger thing. And yeah, I maybe there should be a word for that, because I mean, I think this actually is raising an interesting question that probably could segue into our discussion easily. Is this like a community needs to commune around something, as we know, and I think it's really up for grabs a bit in discussion. Like, well, what does a psychedelic community mean? Because I think that when like psychedelic societies first started in like the early and mid 2010s, psychedelics were way more taboo in 2015. That's when ours started. It's they're just not as taboo now. Like my grandma just started a psychedelic company last week, actually.
What?
I'm just kidding. I was kidding.
Oh, shut up. You asshole.
Yeah, psychedelic
You could have kept
startup.
going.
What's your grandma's company? But no, I mean, it just seems to be very prevalent now that people are starting. My grandmas are no longer with us, unfortunately. R.I.P. to Grandma Rusty. But anyways, the point I'm making is that there's so many places now to talk about psychedelics, and I do think it's up for grabs a bit. And hopefully BPS, and I'm definitely thinking alchemy, are good positive influences in this. Like, well, what are psychedelics really for? Because they were more so kind of like psychonautical communities, which are great, but I don't think like psychedelics are going to actually be like helpful to the general mass of the people if most of the kind of inspiration for like what we're doing with psychedelics is like DMT Nexus or something, or like going as deep as possible. No shade of DMT Nexus, but you know, it's not really like the only two options for people interested in psychedelics shouldn't be like psychonautical explorations or like doing them in a hospital bed. You know, it's like, and I think that's the challenge of psychedelic communities. It's like, well, how do we actually like define what success or help looks like in a way that's within our scope, so we're not over promising, oh, we can heal or help, and also in a way that like actually can help people and not just like be for simply, you know, psychonautical contests, if you will. I don't really see that as much, but I think it's kind of the community we've curated.
Yeah,
That was a lot.
I
I'm sorry.
think
My grandma didn't
communities
start a
of
company, just for the
care,
record. Yeah.
communities of care, like communities of practice, communities that like can kind of self-regulate, hopefully have accountability practices and all that kind of fun stuff. It's going to be really important. So I like the ideas of how do we build the car and then pass over the keys. All right, y'all got this. It's like a decentralized focus. And there's going to be some shit. There's no way around it. It's humans involved, so of course there are. And then how do we actually kind of steward with really good ideas? Here you go. Like, yeah, do you need to do DMTX? Probably not. Do you need to do 5? Probably not. Should it be available in a safe way? Maybe. I don't know. Like, I'm not the arbiter there, but I'm not going to tell you no. But yeah, like, how do we actually do this in a really safe, careful way together, as opposed to XYZ doctor or cult leader comes in and tells you how you should be doing your drugs?
Yeah, that's making me think too, even about this concept of psychedelic community, where psychedelics, I question it a lot. I question like, what does that even mean? Because psychedelics are a
Yeah.
tool, and you can use like, I don't know, an alcohol community, caffeine community, people who drive cars community. I know it's like a thing that we use, and it can be used so many different ways. So I really feel like when we talk about psychedelic community, there's also this assumption that it's not, we're actually not centering around psychedelics as the value. We have different values that we're using psychedelics to support and to get to, right?
Right. It's like an enthusiasm around a set of tools. It's like Snap-on just came out with this new ratchet set, and everybody's fired up about it. Not everybody's going to like repair cars with it. And then
And so many people
Mhm.
can use it terribly too, right? Like
Oh,
psychedelics
yeah.
can be used for evil. So is it
Sure.
really a psychedelic community that we're trying to put forward, or is it a community that's actually how to use psychedelics in this specific way?
Colin, you've got something good here. I know it.
So my grandma's company, if you go to DMT, just kidding. I'll quit with the grandma psychedelic company theme. Okay, it's clearly got all of its juice out. Maybe not. Maybe it's a good joke. A perennial evergreen one. So what I have to say, I really like what Irina is saying about like it's a tool, and if we started like the Brooklyn Hammer Society or something like, well, what are we hammering? Is it skulls or like homes or like there's different things we can build, and I think I'm really looking at this like so we're working on something called the trellis framework. Thank you, Manuel. We're working on something called the trellis framework at BPS, and it's meant to be kind of like a framework for a community of care. But the word trellis, as you guys probably know and our audience knows, it's a general support structure that helps a plant grow. And the idea is to kind of it both outlines like kind of like psychedelic community programming and necessary important community infrastructure you need in place to make it like safe, like accountability, escalation protocols, conflict resolution, how to do preparation, how to do affinity groups, like how to support volunteers and like get them mental health first aid training. It's meant to be kind of like an operating system for like a mutual aid approach for community-based healing. But another thing included in the idea of trellis is that it kind
Isn't
of is
mutual aid
like
dangerous and scary?
it is. It
Horrifying.
is. Are
People
you?
might have power.
Yeah. Well, there's an interesting idea from like mutualism of like when the private sector and the public sector both aren't meeting the needs of the citizenry, like community forms of support flourish and proliferate, hopefully. So one of the silver linings of everything crumbling is actually very, hopefully, fertile ground for people to realize the importance of working together. And mutual aid is a very potent framework through which to think about how that might happen. And we're taking inspiration for that with our trellis framework. But to Irina's point, like what we're talking about here, all three of us is like, well, what is the community to be based around? And the idea of the trellis is like, well, it's meant to be around like human blossoming, human flourishing, creativity, spirituality, mental health and well-being. And psychedelics are like a catalyst for that. They're like a window, but they're not like the path or the door. They're kind of like get you started, but you got to actually walk it. So I see one way. I think that's how psychedelic communities will differentiate themselves. Like, what is their kind of like transformational end or philosophy? And ours is like, well, we think these can be tools for catalyzing healthy change, but actually the communities may be built more around like healthy, gradual, patient change and support rather than just tripping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Irina, anything you want to add there?
It's like psychedelics are like the Trojan horse to a healthier society, really.
Yeah.
That's a best use case, seems like to me.
That's what we're
Yeah,
trying to
we
do.
have all these medical indications we can look at. We should keep learning from whatever the kind of larger superstructure is spending on, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to play their game. These things are really decentralized. They can be very affordable. Like what LSD should be, I don't want to give away the ghost to anybody, but sub $20 a go, maybe down to $1 a go. And then ketamine is $7 a gram for a doctor cost, like pure pharma. And mushrooms in time can be free, roughly speaking. So there's so many ways to do this interesting community care model, explore, share. Get this, back to the psychedelic cup. One woman that was presenting actually grows a lot of mushrooms, gives them away in exchange for coats, for giving coats to homeless folks, people that can't, like these folks will be in the middle of downtown Denver. They can't get over to the Goodwill where they have a voucher for a coat. And she's just like, here you go, here's a coat. I swapped mushrooms. And she's actually, there's so many people growing so many mushrooms here. I'm sure New York's somewhat similar, that people are just giving them away like crazy, which is awesome. And she's using it
Plot
in that kind of
twist.
like reciprocal. Go for it. What was that?
It's Colin's grandma.
There we go.
There it
yeah,
is.
thank you for mentioning that. The company is called
Yeah, we're on the pink exchange. Yeah, so I'm gonna throw a little bit more comments up here than I usually do, but yeah, humans to do
I
what
like
they
that
want to
one.
do. Yeah.
Are you saying, Joe, this person was selling mushrooms and giving them away, but somehow using that to help give coats away or something? Like they
Yeah,
were
it's like a
connecting
coat
those two?
drive. Like, come
That's
donate some
awesome.
coats and you get free mushrooms. Like, you're not using
That
these
is so
coats anymore.
cool.
Let's give them to people that
Yeah.
really need them. We're going into a really cold winter here in Colorado. You guys probably have similar situations at times in New York, though it's kind of
It's
tropical over
89
there.
degrees right now in November in New York.
I would cry. I would cry.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
this is a big solution, right? You have this problem. You got way too many mushrooms. You got a solution. Let's like change coats and give people a thing.
A metaphor I think of, like, or I guess an allegory, I don't know, something like that, is if broccoli was for some reason illegal, and all of a sudden we're like, oh my god, broccoli actually has a ton of health benefits, which, a second plot twist, it does. And it's like, okay, great, let's make what's happening now in the psychedelic field is like most of the funding and research is like, okay, how do we make broccoli pills? It's like, what? Sure. Like, I guess I'm not intrinsically opposed to broccoli pills, but also this stuff can be grown for pennies on the dollar, and we should make it easier for people to form broccoli farms and share it. I know, like, yes, some exchanges will need to be made, like broccoli farmers do, but and it's really easy to say this, like, outside, there's so much work to be done, like, well, it's like cultural change, political change, legal change, like a lot of critical mass of organizing work. And it's also just great to be on this podcast with Arena and the few others I know in this space. It's such, like, we're like, psychedelics are niche, and it's like psychedelic, like, community is like the niche of the niche. Like, what if it was like accessible and effective? Like, shut up. But I think it should help more people.
Yeah. I find it important to learn and celebrate the wins of biotech, but also say, hey guys, like, we're still doing this anyway, with or without you. We're not stopping. We're going to keep trying to take care of each other. Amazing if it needs to come through the medical pathway to get somebody the help they are only willing to access that way. But that's not what we're here for. We're here for very different things. Yeah. So, Arena, I'm kind of curious, like, we operate a training program here at Psychedelic Say. It's vital, and we have our orientation. I'm kind of curious, what do you all do, and like, what's your kind of orientation with the training?
Yeah, sure. And also, I feel like I'm still thinking about this now. She's a grandma with coats.
Go for it. Go for it.
And, which will feed
woman.
into this, but she's great. We love her, Linda.
She runs a training. Linda runs a training in Denver or Metro to teach people how to grow mushrooms. So she's not like at really cheap rates. So it's like, not only is she kind of like making this kind of cool cyclical thing of getting people clothed and warm and fed, but like, how do you spread that? And that was my takeaway from the Denver Psychedelic Cup, is the mushroom thing is still spreading like crazy. Like, I remember teaching people to grow, I don't know, 2008, 9. And now it's just like absolutely bananas what we're seeing these days.
Yeah, and I love that example of how she's taking something that so many people are so pumped and so excited about, and she's just making such like tangible use out of it. And one of the things that we talk about in our training, both in our 2-year associate therapist training and our 7-week online virtual ketamine-assisted therapy training, is this idea of psychedelic social work, where so many people, I think especially therapists, especially psychedelic therapists, get into this work because they personally had a mind-blowing, life-changing psychedelic experience, and they want other people to have that too. And I think that there's a huge risk in that. One, amazing, follow your hearts, do the thing. I personally have also been greatly impacted by psychedelics, obviously. But there's a risk in wanting others to have the same experience as you And what ends up happening in that I've seen is that people get so excited about these like breakthrough experiences. And I got to give these to my clients, that when a client comes in saying, oh, hey, I lost my SNAP benefits, I don't have food stamps anymore, they start to not see that as part of psychedelic therapy. And what we talk about is that is exactly part of psychedelic therapy, because that's helping people build the foundation that they need in order to eventually get to this place of being able to explore their consciousness, which is a right that everyone has. So we talk about this idea of psychedelic social work being an integral part of psychedelic therapy, not something that you just kind of like pass along to, you know, the social workers over there who want to do that on the streets level stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. This is so I was just at this really interesting kind of Aspen Institute conference on Ibogaine on Friday. It was a Friday-Saturday event, and you see like very big players, like, you know, Rick Perry's the kind of chair of the board of Americans for Ibogaine. Brian Hubbard, who I think most of us know, is this deep religious fervor of, you know, how do we medicalize Ibogaine? You know, I think that's laudable. It's a 6 to 20 year project when we can be growing and decriminalizing now, and helping people immediately access these things. It could be really helpful. Mushrooms might not have that same magic that Ibogaine has to get people off of opioids, but plenty of people have been helped with addiction through mushrooms. And like, let's not beat around the bush. Ketamine too. It's available here now. And I think Ibogaine could be a Trojan horse for the larger psychedelic conversation into a lot of America, where it hasn't infiltrated yet. It hasn't like shown up yet as meaningful, especially when they see, oh, this Ibogaine medicalization thing is going to take forever. And I can grow mushrooms in my closet for like $50. Amazing. Like, let's do that. Yeah. What do you have any reflections there, Colin?
I actually just wanted to reflect on what Irina just shared about the idea of like, we'll just, yeah, I'm sure it's like maybe an example you're coming up with, Irina, but maybe it did actually happen. I wouldn't be surprised if it did. It's like people get so wide-eyed, people dilated about the benefits of psychedelics, but then just the realities other people are facing in different income strata or whatever, just like chafe again, or just like, what? Like, your SNAP benefits are gone. And a lot of people, psychedelics are mostly limited to people who have like a pretty comfortable or privileged economic position to even like, oh yeah, maybe I'll take a drug to help with my mental health. Like, it kind of is something for the privilege right now. And I like what you're saying about just, well, maybe it is psychedelic actually to show up and listen and encounter this person struggling or facing challenges with their SNAP benefits, because you're seeing them as like another person, and you can have more empathy and compassion for them as yourself, perhaps. And yeah, there's like this whole philosophy called like personalism, and it comes from like theistic theology kind of background, but I think it's just really relevant actually to a lot of the ways we think about psychedelics, because it's the idea that the most real thing is like personhood or like personalities. Like, you can extend this even to like ecosystems have a certain agency, and like animals, and like nature, and like, of course, people, obviously. And yeah, really just the whole idea of personalism, that when someone is suffering, or anyone, an animal or person, but more so, I guess, for people, it's supposed to draw a response out of you that you can either respond with like radical hospitality, or like kind of put up your guard or be indifferent. And like we've heard before, the three of us have heard, and I think it's true, like psychedelics are non-specific amplifiers. So it does require the psychedelics to be utilized in, I think, a community of values and a community of practice. And like, well, what are those values? Because if psychedelics would help us be more compassionate and like see where people are at and facing, like actually try to help them without the need for like, well, I'll have a social worker take care of that. Because that's the whole idea, is like, well, it's good we have these governmental systems and formal programs, but also we we're kind of missing out in an encounter with the other and helping them, and that can be a transformational experience in and of itself. So that's the whole thing we could talk about. I just really relate and appreciate what you're sharing, Irina.
Yeah, Irina, can you comment on that a little bit for us?
Yeah. Oh, my brain's going so many different places. Yeah, I just keep thinking about how like this Trojan horse concept, how like we're really not here for the drug, we're really not here for this individual experience. We're really here to like break out of our shells, and society nowadays makes us so individualized, especially like white American society. We're living in such individualistic containers. And I do want to say that I think a lot of folks from systemically marginalized communities have by necessity broken out of these shells and have learned to lean on each other and use community to survive because they've had to. And in some ways, us white folks are multiple steps behind, but that's definitely my hope, is that we learn how to lean on each other more through the use of psychedelics, as opposed to, one thing that just came to mind too is that I used to do a lot of volunteering with the Zendo project. So I would go to events and support people who were tripping there. And all of the things that we learn about supporting people who are tripping are exactly the same things that we would need to support somebody who's unhoused on the streets having a mental health crisis. But for some reason, there's this like separation. It's like, oh, if the person's on psychedelics, I can connect, I know what to do, I can slow down and check in on them, I can get them some food and water. But if the person is unhoused and on the streets and maybe experiencing some sort of other altered state of consciousness from other substances, heaven forbid, right? There's also this putting psychedelics on this pedestal effect that happens in our society. Then like we don't touch that. We don't make eye contact. We don't support people who aren't in this very specific psychedelic crisis bubble. So that's something that I always really like to question as well. Of like, why are we doing that, and what's happening, and why not apply those same skills to other people?
Yeah, Colin, are you seeing any kind of way that thinking might be playing out at BPS or other psychedelic communities?
I mean, there are values I'm trying to inculcate in the community, and I mean, I don't want to go there, but I'm about to. But like,
Go there.
Oh man, this is live, right? Okay. Don't worry, I'm not gonna say anything crazy. Just like, oh shit. But I think
no takebacks.
Okay, no takebacks. The whole idea of like values and like community values are really important. I think Irina is speaking to values that I very much resonate with, and I think many of us do. Yeah, like Peggy just shared, being human, another human. That is just profoundly helpful in and of its transformational in itself. Like there's this Jesuit who helped start like these groups that help former gang members in LA like get work, and he would like house and shelter them and like work with them to get jobs. And he has a really great quote that goes, "We go to the margins not to change, but to be changed." Like there's something in that encounter that changes us. And so where I'm going is that I think lowercase r religion and spirituality is actually really important. And spirituality is kind of like the individualized version of that. But you actually need like a cosmology greater than yourself that kind of informs the values that you live by. And I've shared this in certain forms, like psychedelics help me become like a mystical Christian again, I would say, and like help me re-own that part of I was raised that way, but I was like, not Christian or identifying as one, as atheist for quite a while. But like I realized those values and the good parts of it, of like radical hospitality and like care for the poor and the oppressed, like that whole idea of like love incarnate just like really spoke to me. So I'm not advocating that people go to a certain religion or mine unless if they want to talk to me personally, that I'm here. But what more importantly, like the challenge I think is, well, how do we inculcate like kind of cosmological values that are important to us in like secular pluralistic language? Like how do we make like love a policy? Because I policy is like a weird word, but like because what I think you're speaking to, Irina, is like it's like a radical form of like love and compassion. Like you're loving your neighbor as yourself, and it's not easy. And where I'm going, or where I'll wrap up, turn off the fire hose in a second. But like how I think of it is like I think that one of the challenges is to go from just like a community of practice around a certain tool and to transition to a community of practice around values is an interesting journey that I think the psychedelic community, with an asterisk being like, what is that, needs to make. And I think there's going to be resources from the old school religious tradition I think are actually going to be quite helpful for that, because how you create values and like a culture that privileges and idolizes like autonomy and actually freeing yourself of obligation towards others is going to be a challenge, I think. And I have ideas how that plays out, but I don't want to like completely take it there. But I think that's a really interesting question and challenge for the future of the psychedelic community ecosystem.
One of my regular rants is about, it's along those lines, Colin. It's like, oh, cool, we had all these insights, but we're still going to champion putting people in cages for victimless crimes, aka ingesting drugs that our community doesn't like. And I just think that's absolutely bonkers. You're like, oh, there's clearly bad drugs and bad people out there using those drugs, so they need to be incarcerated. Absolutely unfathomable to me how people still exist in that framework. I don't know, I've melted too many times to like think like that. And it turns out I have friends now that sometimes do those things. And I'm like, oh, okay, only mushroom users are good, or only ayahuasca users are good, or only people that can afford to go drink ayahuasca in the jungle are good. Like, get a grip, everybody. Like, let's be a little bit easier with each other and like actually be charitable, not only to others in our community, but to the world. I think so. Like, that's my kind of my approach. How much better could the US government be spending money rather than incarcerating drug users? Crazy. How many people can we feed? A lot is the answer. Not to mention breaking families for many generations, like putting families in a really bad place for 7 or more generations after a drug incarceration is just unconscionable. Like, it's, I don't identify as Christian, but I think it's really a bad use of our culture's time. Like, why aren't we helping people? Why are we actively harming through taxpayer dollars?
Mm-hmm.
And we know why, right? We know why.
Oh, tell me why. Tell me why. I wish I knew. It's been killing me. Is it the $1 trillion in propaganda, or is it something different?
All of that, and to take away rights from Black and brown people, and trans folks and queer folks and disabled folks. Yeah. And exactly, absolutely, it's been going on. I mean, I my roots started in drug policy reform. As a little teenager, I was so excited. I went to one drug policy conference, and then I was like, y'all, all we have to do is tell people how bad this is, and then it'll be over. And I believed that for like 2 months. But yeah, it's part of such a big integrated system that's all about taking away rights from certain people, and then even a bigger system than that of imperialism, of capitalism, of taking away land and property, colonization. We can get into that on next episode. But I think it's so interesting. Like, it's like, I don't know, how can this word love even be taken to become this, it's such a huge feeling, experience, such an impactful world that's everything, like, to actually love people. And I'm an outreach worker too, so I work with folks who are unhoused and on the streets, and you have to like bring an element of like deep love and deep compassion to working with everyone. I mean, to life, in order to live, I think. But I'm also a member of Colin's church, apparently. But then it's incredible that word and that experience can be taken to become this like isolated, individualistic experience. It's hard to put into words, but it's like how it gets from that to the spiritual bypassy type of love, I guess is what I'm saying. How it gets to like, oh yeah, like we're all one, brother, we're all one, and in reality, people who say that can go from like this expansive version of love to like love as actually this like harmful weapon because they're choosing who to love and who not to love, and it's conditional love. And actually, I don't really love people. I'm just saying that because that's what I'm supposed to say. So anyway, my rant.
It's only if you're doing breath work and cold plunges the right way that you get the right love.
I
Sorry
mean, for
to go
me,
there.
I don't love anyone else. So
Not without a cold
Hate
plunge.
cold plunge. Fucking hate cold plunge. I understand everybody. But yeah, Colin, anywhere you want to go with that?
Wow, there's a lot there. Yeah, I know exactly where. Yeah, I think like one of the unspoken, unacknowledged, ginormous benefits that the kind of medical clinical approach has to psychedelics that the community-based space needs to figure out for themselves, for ourselves, is because I'm not, just for the record, I'm totally in favor of a more medical, clinical approach to psychedelics. I think this would be very important, and it helps a lot of people. And from an access standpoint, as you guys probably know, like you could argue it's gonna bring more access to people because a lot of people are gonna access psychedelics through insurance, and through their they're gonna be open to it through their doctors. So I'm all for and in favor of there being like traditional clinical approaches to psychedelics, but when I'm working on my mission here, and I think at least a solid chunk of arenas, I don't want to speak for you, Arena, but is like, well, what if there was a community-based ecosystem where it was much more affordable and accessible? And one of the main benefits that the kind of more medical clinical approach has, and I'm generalizing, is that it has kind of metrics of success or betterment. It's like, okay, is this person still depressed? Yay or nay? Do they need to continue with another round or not? And then there's like off ramps for that. And the challenge with the community-based ecosystem is like, well, we don't really have like a language for that, and if we did, we have to be also very careful to not say we're doing or giving therapy, right? Because that would be, we can't say that unless we're licensed therapists. Which are you a therapist, Arena? I'm
yes,
social work. Yes, so you can
therapist.
say that. I can't.
Yeah.
Yes, I can't, and not that I am saying that. So, but what I'm saying is, like, for example, just like AA, for instance, that is such an inspiration to me for what Alcoholics Anonymous did with like the 12-step program, because even if someone doesn't agree with AA or its approaches or the theistic bent that it has, if someone was struggling with drinking or alcoholism, you'd be remiss to at least not mention that as an offering that they should explore if it works for them, or it resonates with them, because it's mostly everywhere and it's free 99 and it works. It's accessible and it works, and it's like free. So I kind of sometimes see like, well, what we're trying to do is like with Trellis is similar to the 12-step program does, like create a framework for values. And I know I'm kind of all over the place, but I think that's I think if the psychedelic community ecosystem was to grow up and to mature, not that we're immature in a bad way, maybe there's some of that, but like, let's level up now, because it's no longer just like, yeah, if you want to just come to a psychedelic site to like learn about psychedelics, come by. It's no longer 2015. People could do that everywhere, like my grandma's company. But if people really wanted to get, hey, I'm struggling with depression and I can't afford a $3,000 mushroom trip in Oregon, and they can go to a society or a community like Arenas and actually get affordable help and say, wow, I no longer either am depressed or my suffering's been greatly reduced and I can get back to being a mom, being a worker, being whatever it might be. I think that is going to be part of the challenge and the journey of the community-based ecosystem to like actually be able to create a viable alternative.
Can I add on to that?
Please.
I'll add on to that. So, well, something really exciting at Alchemy is that we are going next year. We're going to be moving into a new community space. It's going to double the amount of our office spaces, called Root and Bloom Institute by the Vision Walkers Collective. So it's this brand new, renovated, giant building that's going to be used to really bring together psychedelic community, which I feel like that's like a project that like keeps like trying to happen. You know, it's like, yeah, the psychedelic community like building, and it keeps starting up a little bit and then something doesn't work out. But y'all, I think it's really going to work out this time. And it's really exciting. And if people want to find out more, alchemytherapy.org/root. And also come to our benefit. We have an in-person benefit in Oakland on Ohlone land on this Friday. And people can also join virtually, alchemytherapy.org/benefit. And we have a silent auction that's up. That's really fun. That Psychedelics Today is also helping us with.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
It's great to just see collaborations like this. Is like cross-pollinating, like, and I just am hopeful because of it. You know, in spite of the really challenging situations we're facing across so many communities in America, we're still doing it, right? Because we still believe in it, right? And this is, I was on a panel yesterday at that Global Psychedelics Week deal around kind of climate, and David Luke said pretty much 100% of the people he's researched have this greater kind of nature relatedness thing, as opposed to being, I'm a unique thing from everything else out there after psychedelic experiences. And I think, like, you know, this is helpful. Like, hopefully people just don't go into crazy ego land and want to just, like, you know, how do I get 80 new cars or whatever? Talk a lot about
Keep
cars
telling my grandma that.
Right.
She's only got 78.
Grandma, I think you're good with 78.
We love you
guys,
still.
y'all recall that with the Osho thing? He just kept getting Rolls Royces or something.
Oh yeah, I watched that documentary during the pandemic. Because I've liked some of his books and stuff. I've read a few of them, and or you know, just like glanced. I was like, oh, let's check out this innocent documentary about him. And then it's like, oh shit, like bringing in the homeless and getting the vote, and that it was like injecting them with.
They never talked about the drug situation there. I think there's a substantial amount of drug use there, and they never really talked about it in that documentary. You know, imagine how easy that would have been to do in the early 90s, late 80s with MDMA or something with such a charismatic cult leader like an Osho. Not saying I know the particulars, but if anybody wants to tell me, I'm really open to hearing it. I think it's really interesting.
I think it speaks so much too about integration, a word that I don't think we've used yet, but that we're all implying here, is that a psychedelic experience on its own is just a trippy, weird time, but then you have to actually do the work and integrate it. And part of that is integrating in a community that knows how to support with that, which many societies have figured out a long time ago. We're just here catching up.
You mean psychedelic societies, right?
Absolutely. Whatever that means.
No, you're right. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious how do you have ideas for how that can be done in the community ecosystem arena? Or like, I mean, your approach?
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because we're therapists at Alchemy, which also has HIPAA confidentiality boundaries around it. So it is really individualistic work. And we try to work within that to also create spaces for community connection. So we have, you know, in-person gatherings when we can, we do groups when we can. We have even an equitable sliding scale, equitable distribution scale, where, you know, those who can pay more end up supporting those who can pay less. So even that is part of a community mindset. And then as we're moving into this new building, we're going to be doing more like workshops and bigger groups and events and stuff like that. So I think just like literally like space for people to come and connect in and of itself can be so healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I've been kind of chatting with leaders around the country about how do we even go, like how far can we go with this kind of thing? And I was actually, Colin, this could be of interest to you. I think church infrastructure could be leveraged here in really interesting ways. Like we have real estate, we have physicians, we have insurances, we have kind of the ability to do community care clinics as part of an existing established church who theoretically would want to help people, even if it looks like something scary like a ketamine. And how can we just like radically drive the cost low through hopefully volunteer, a lot of volunteer services, like think soup kitchen. But, you know, then there's the are your basic needs met? Are psychedelics okay for you yet? That's a really big thing that we need to address. Because, you know, a lot of people are like, bonkers, folks. Let's just give people, even if they're unhoused, a lot of mushrooms on the street. And like, that's not really like how about food and shelter first? everybody. um, and then, that's if we meaningfully want to make a dent there. And Colin, years ago, I remember hearing about the Hopkins religious leaders study, which everybody I hope is aware of. Did some recent
They
coverage
did
on
what?
some of the issues there. Yeah, right.
Oh,
Everybody
I don't
should
know if I
read
saw
my
the
recent coverage.
issues.
hmm
What were some? Maybe I missed
Oh,
that.
let's
The
get into that
issues part.
second. Let's get into that
Yeah,
second.
sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
I saw that this happened, and I somehow bumped into some of these folks like Hunt and others. Aize, I think, came on my radar. I love Aize quite a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this whole kind of angle he has is just exquisite. And how what I ended up doing was producing a really early Christian psychedelic summit with Christian leaders, which I just happen to have been born here and studied it in school a little bit, but not clergy in any way. And I was like, guys, let's get together and talk about this. This is really important. You all had a really big experience. What do you want to do? What's possible? So I gave them kind of like a landscape report, and here's the laws, here's the experiences, here's what you could do. And people were going to their bishops and asking, can we grow mushrooms and give them away for free?
Wow.
I think at most what happened was people were using church land to grow cannabis and give it away to their people, which is really damn cool. But that's a start. How do we go from there and say, how do we leverage this large infrastructure that we all belong to for the benefit
When you
of
say
not only our community but everybody?
when you say church, you mean like traditional Christian churches were giving away their
I was
land?
primarily Episcopal. Like I'm pretty sure it was
Okay.
Episcopal stuff. I don't have a
Yeah.
citation or a link. That stuff's a little federally risky.
That's cool. Yeah. Yeah.
But if they're in medical need, right? It's not just like, hey, 21-year-old, here's the hottest new dab.
Hey, I'm going to a concert next week.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Right. It's like in medical need and you can't afford it. Like, how do we actually do medicine with each other in a collaborative way and leverage existing traditional infrastructure of let's call it institutional religion? And like, I think there's a lot of benefit there if we start thinking about these larger systems that might be more interested in helping us than perhaps the federal government is. Generally that's my sense right now.
That makes me think too, Colin, what you and I were talking about when we were on the panel together at the Psychedelic Science Conference, which is that ultimately, I think that there's a lot of pressure on nonprofits to become self-sustaining, and it's just not the world that we live in. We need donations, we need support, we need money in order to keep these things going, and that's just the reality of it. And we can't do it alone. We need donations to come in regularly, monthly. So plug for that, because we just can't survive otherwise.
Yeah, I have so much to say about that. I was asked to write an article for Double Blind about the community approach. I'm going to talk about philanthropy in it, or at least my take on it, because I've gotten that as well from, I think, well-meaning donors. I will say, like, sociologically, I wonder, because there's not really many old school psychedelic foundations yet, that a lot of the funders of the space did come from like business that they made their funds. So I think they're kind of just like somewhat like on autopilot. And I was like, well, how are you making money? It's like, what? Well, we do some events, and that's great. And so I think the argument needs to be made why it needs to be philanthropically subsidized for the foreseeable future. My number one way I put it is like, look, the main thing people are going to be willing to pay for, like the elephant in the room, is a journey. Unless they can like journey, it's like I use the metaphor of like a ski equipment. Like we sell like the boots, the skis, the French fries, and the lodge, and everything else. People are like, great, where do I ski? Like, oh, we can't help you with that. That is like, I really wish you luck.
Come to Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado, actually, literally, for your skiing and mushroom needs. It's Colorado or bust. So I think there needs to be a kind of vision and a narrative that encourages long-term thinking. How I kind of think of it is that these trellis frameworks will help members of psychedelic societies and adjacent communities help their local members, like support them as best they can. and then hopefully those individuals provide and communities provide a critical mass for a citizen-based healing advocacy platform to advocate for policy change in the local and state level that is favorable to community-based psychedelic communities or cooperatives being formed, where they can grow the material they need for the journeys. But it's a multifaceted community organizing locally, 501c4 political organizing adjacent to that, and gradually the policy might change favorable to community-based approaches to this, but it's got to be subsidized. And the good news is I think it'd be subsidized for really not that much. Some psychedelic nonprofits have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and I feel like the psychedelic community sector, if you will, has probably gotten around 1 million total. I don't even know. And I'm grateful to say we've gotten a chunk of that. But I feel like in order to actually move the needle forward, it's got to be substantially more. But I don't think hundreds of millions, but if there was a $10 million fund for community-based approaches in the US, I think it could have dramatic impact on moving the needle forward.
I would agree with you, Colin. I think all right, so God, how do I do this in 2 minutes or less? So, in a recent history in America, a lot of things got privatized, right? So, people and services effectively got cut. A lot of these costs were effectively outsourced to police very inappropriately, when there were probably smarter ways to handle a lot of this stuff. So many things. And now cuts keep happening. The community is bearing the brunt of that. The promise was that when people get rich, they're going to be a little bit more philanthropic in the right ways, and it didn't necessarily play out. So people, where do we need and want to be philanthropic? It's a big open question. There is a funding ecosystem in the psychedelic arena, though it's a little bit centralized. I've been thinking about, and kind of 2, 3, 4, 8 people, kind of their agenda kind of steers that talk track. When I think about this, I think about how do we actually develop a more robust, healthy funding ecosystem, and diversity comes to mind. We don't want a monoculture, a monolith of funding ecosystems, like the Eye of Sauron, but with generosity kind of deal. How do we just blast money in 1 or 2 things to get that big leverage point win, which hasn't really, I don't know, got us very much traction. If we look at Massachusetts Question 4, a lot of stuff happened there that wasn't great from that funding ecosystem. So I'm hopeful that with this Americans for Ibogaine thing, a whole new ecosystem of funders is now activated from Texas largely, and they're not affiliated with PSFC. How do we actually see a broader diversity of funders come forward and say, hey, maybe we want to do this different from PSFC because we haven't seen PSFC be successful in the way we want our kind of group to be successful. And maybe it's religious, maybe it's community focused, maybe, not science related at all. We all have our kind of buckets of interest here, but yeah, that's end of rant.
Bailiwicks.
I think that was maybe 3 minutes. Yeah. And Colin, I want to show you, I'm going to bring something on screen because I kind of didn't address this. It was more methodological and ethics issues around the study, but we covered this in July pretty well. No, don't hear from us later. Wrong button. So, I think we covered this really carefully about the methodological issues and what would have called for really, really careful science. In terms of ethics, it was funders being directly involved in the science, actually doing the work, which is, I don't my feelings aren't hurt. It's just what ethics being what makes for the most high quality science. And, having kind of a vested interest or, whatever, the data wasn't as rigorous and as helpful as we had all hoped for it to be. But that's science, it's a project. It's never going to be perfect, and we always want to iterate. It's an ally. So I would advise people listen to this episode. Eric Rex, Scientific Integrity, Psychedelic Research, and a Religious Leaders Study. We were actually really kind because I love that study. I love the people that ran it. I think the funders were cool. I think, they just kind of fell a little short on what they were hoping for. So nothing really crazy. That's the end of the story there on that one. But I love the religious topic here. I'm, endlessly fascinated by it. And I think it disrupts old systems of power and priestcraft, and how do we actually kind of take a little bit more agency on ourselves?
And I also work with a lot of atheists too.
Well,
So
you're in
like what
Oakland,
are right? Well, I don't know. You'd think it would be the opposite. A lot of astrology queers here too.
astrology queers.
The thing.
So like the idea is, yeah, how do we actually break? So I like to say, how do we shift them from militant atheism to at least a little bit of the pathway of wonder, and then hopefully they want to explore that place of wonder and figure out where they want to be. I understand how the world is, and it's not that. Like, a couple mushroom sessions might really break that frame.
Or not. Atheists can be happy too.
I really understand how the world works now.
Well, like what I feel like that brings us to this like bigger question of like what is spirituality, what does religion actually mean? And I feel like if you start talking to an atheist for long enough, they have values, they have things that they really care about, they have people that they love, and once you get to that core, it's like we're talking about the same shit, y'all.
And what I've found is often people identifying hardcore with like militant atheism still might be pantheists. They still might be animists. They just they don't have the kind of Yahwist framework as like a viable thing. And they just don't necessarily have the language around it. Some might, Carl Sagan probably did plenty of acid, and he was militant till the end. And it's not necessarily about being happy, right? It's about, well, that's part of it. It's like being happy in community.
It's about being rich.
Being happy with others and like helping others. I like how Colin put it, like radical hospitality and kindness. Like, I think, like, how do we kind of just collectively say, yeah, like maybe I need to also do some self-development, but let's also be charitable when we can be, like, even if it's a little uncomfortable or a lot uncomfortable, which, with climate that's coming. So where do we want to direct people's attention? We kind of hit an hour, and I'm happy to go for a little bit longer if you guys have, kind of want to.
Well, can I just share one more quick thing on this topic?
Yeah, of course.
Why I think like traditional religious sources, and I mean traditional in the sense of like Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, like the kind of like Islam, like all the big name and other less prominent ones perhaps, like they all have kind of like theories of what we're transforming into. In like religious studies, it's called like soteriology, like the study of salvation in different religious traditions. And I think that's actually a very fruitful concept for the psychedelic community ecosystem. Like, well, what are we transforming into? Like, we talk about transformation, like we know, like, and we use the metaphor of like, yeah, like this is so embarrassing, butterflies or caterpillars become butterflies. What is that thing again? And we know what a butterfly looks like, or like we know, and I think that's interesting. It's like, well, what are our conceptions of what we're transforming into? And like, at least from the Christian tradition, which is what I'm a part of in background, is like, well, we're actually supposed to be apotheosis or divinized into little Christ. We're supposed to be like Christ on earth, like radically loving, hopefully non-violent, God willing. And that's, to me, my kind of inspiration of, I don't want to end on this and stuff for the whole conversation, but like on like a philosophical level, like what are we transforming into? Because, and that's what's interesting, and it's going to be one of the challenges, but I think interesting in the psychedelic community, because the medical model has what you're going to transform into is like a less suffering person, which is great. We need that, But I think that's what's so exciting about the community-based approach is that, well, what will work for psychedelics? Like, for using our example, like AA, the idea is that there is like a spiritual path one goes through, but like one benefit of that path is hopefully people are sober after that, or free from alcoholism, or whatever other 12-step program they're in. But the greater program of the 12-step is you have a spiritual disposition towards life then. And that's what I think is exciting. Like, it's kind of like, I don't think it's like all these different religious traditions should have like a competitive neoliberal free market where they compete and like one is the victor. I think it's meant to be kind of like inspiring for people, like, well, what are they actually personally drawn to, and can they interface with those communities that they're a part of? Long story short, I do think people should be encouraged to have a cosmological vision of what they feel called to transform into. Because, like we're saying, if it's just like a better oligarch or whatever it might be, then, well, that you can do that. You're free. You're free to do that. But like this community of values, we're actually trying to create more compassionate people, or trying to like psychedelic bodhisattvas, whatever it might be. And I think there's such a rich set of resources in, because like one more quick thing, Houston Smith, the religion scholar, said we often throw out religion baby with the bathwater. Like, we don't throw out pharmacy just because of big pharma. We don't throw out business because of big business. But religion is like, bleh. I see that a lot in the psychedelic space. So actually, there's a lot there. Of course, there's a lot of bad stuff out there. Really great talk was by Bob Jesse on YouTube called Reconstructing Religion, that he gave, I think it either Johns Hopkins, but it was for Psychedelic Science 2013. And he talks about the utility of those kind of cosmological structures. That's, if I could give a shout out to that YouTube video by Bob Jesse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gosh, I'm trying not to run.
Sorry to like end.
No, it's solid. I like, how do I stop myself? But yeah, there is a lot of important stuff there in studying at least religious history, contemporary religious practice. I really like the John Cobb framework of process theology quite a bit. He kind of laid out what his church experience was, and I was like, oh, that was radically different than me and my family's history with this thing. But yeah, there's a lot of potential reclamation of these traditions for making it really useful and viable, not only for you and your communities, but the world. But how do we do that skillfully and, without harm and violence? Yeah, because, yeah, there, end of rant, Irina. And try not to go too far. Where do you want to go from here?
I feel like as a harm reduction therapist, I'd be remiss not to add that AA typically does not work for people. And it works for some people, right? And like, coming back to this harm reduction philosophy of a menu of options that people get to pick and choose from and really find what works for them at a given time in their lives. I feel like similarly, that's what we're talking about too when we talk about psychedelic treatment. Like, there's a menu of different ways to do it. You could do it with friends, you could do it in therapy, you could do it in a medical model, and it's all about helping people find out what they need and who they are through the process.
Can you, from
harm reduction?
Well, like, check this next box. Is it a silver bullet?
Absolutely not. I'm so over it. No, but truly, what?
That's my grandma's company's name.
Silver Bullet LLC. I feel like psychedelics work for some people at some times in some models. But again, that's why only 1/3 of our clients at Alchemy are actually using ketamine as part of their therapy. The rest of it is therapy. I mean, really what we're offering is therapy and connection and being heard and being seen, and some tools that can support people with their daily lives. And psychedelics can sometimes be helpful in deepening into all of that work, but psychedelics aren't the thing. The thing is actually the relationships.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've spent most of my time in kind of graph lineage breathwork spaces, and there's very little drugs there. Some caffeine, less caffeine than AA though. And I think it's giving AA a bad name, everybody. Sorry. Like, check the data, see if it's going to work for you. Totally. Similarly, probably most rehabs in America, tragically poor performance. So, check the data before you pick your treatment option or community.
Or don't check the data. Try it yourself. Like, instead of evidence-based practice. Yeah, practice-based evidence instead of evidence-based practice, because you're an individual.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I suffered from chronic pain for well over a decade. No treatment that I was provided by any practitioner really made a dent until I started, get this, abusing MDMA and mushrooms. Then my chronic pain went away. Fucking cool. So, wish I could sue some doctors and get 10 years back, but I can't, so here I am.
But you said abusing them, you think?
I was going real hard. Yeah.
Are you speaking in hyperbole, or you really thought you were overdoing it? Or if you want to share, no pressure.
Oh yeah, I was going super hard, like every single weekend, pretty hard
Oh wow.
for years and years. Yeah. But that said, I know very famous psychiatrists in the ecosystem that are eating ecstasy every weekend from the same drug dealer at the same nightclub, and that's been going for decades. So, like, you know, what is abuse? I think it's a spectrum, and everybody's got to kind of have a practice-based evidence set for them to then play out the rest of their lives. You know, and you know, I think there's worse things than eating ecstasy every weekend for people. Yeah, plenty of worse things. So, all right. I think let's plug your organizations one more time, and where can people learn more?
You can go to bps.community to learn more about Brooklyn Psychedelic Society, and we're also on Instagram. And yeah,
Beautiful. Irina?
You can go to alchemytherapy.org/benefit in particular to learn about our benefit that's coming up on Friday, which you can join virtually or in person in Oakland. And we also have an Instagram. What is it? Alchemy Community Therapy? I think that's it. You can find it.
Brilliant. Well, I really appreciate you both spending the time here today with me and digging into some really fun, exciting, and occasionally edgy topics. And I hope we get to do it again in the future. So keep up the great work, both of you. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Absolutely.